Hi all, and welcome to join our webinar today. As it's not quite the time yet, so we can wait for a few more seconds and then start. But really great to have you all here today and happy to have you join us. Hope you've had a nice day so far. So let's see, I think, yeah, we still have some people joining, but I think that since we do have a quite extensive toolkit to provide for you today, so we can start, and then if there are any kind of latecomers joining in, they can jump in once they have a chance. So great to have you all here. And my name is Annu Karhu, and I'm part of the customer happiness team at Auntie. And today, together with me here, I have Linnea Bäckström, who will be conducting the webinar for you today. So as said, really great to have you all here. Great that you found the time to join us. The topic today is dealing with anxiety and worries in the middle of crisis. So very important topic at the moment, and really nice that we have Linnea here to share her thoughts on this. So just a few practicalities before we start. We are recording this webinar, so you will all receive a link to this afterwards, and you will also be able to find the recording on our Auntie channel on YouTube. And if you have any questions or comments, feel free to add those to the chat or to the QA box, and we can address those at the end. So yeah, really, as said, really nice to have you all here. And Linnea, I'm giving the floor to you at this point. Go ahead.
Thank you, Annu. And welcome from my side as well. As I can see, there's lots of participants coming in today, and I think that is telling us that we are really trying to talk about something important in the middle of the situation that the whole world is in. Usually at Auntie, we like to be a bit playful, even though we talk about psychological content. But today, I think, since we are talking about a crisis, I think it's time to tone that playfulness down a little bit and talk about something serious in a serious matter as well. I hope that you are getting something out of this webinar today, some tool that you can use in your daily life, even though we can't stop the war that is going on there, but we can control our own lives at least, even just a little bit. We have a lot of things to talk about today, and I have a lot of tools to give you. So it might be that we're spending the whole 30 minutes on the content side. And then after that, if you have any questions or comments, then we'll see how much time we have afterwards. And then I will be answering your questions to the best of my abilities. I am Linnea Bäckström, and I work here at Auntie as a development manager. So that means that I produce and develop all the psychological content that Auntie offers, just like these webinars. I also work as an Auntie professional and do the professional work, which is the conversational support that Auntie offers. My background is actually in personal training. I did that for several years, 7 years, and I got really interested in the psychology part of that coaching, and that led me to university, and then later on here to the Auntie's table here. But you're not here to talk about or hear about me. You're here to talk about the situation that's going on and what you could do in your daily life. So here's the agenda for today. First, we're going to look at the definition of a crisis, and then how the mind usually reacts to a crisis. And I think especially if you're in Finland, the situation might be that you're mostly hearing about the crisis, and that has also effects on our minds. So we'll see that what those effects can be and what kind of symptoms that can actually create. And then the third part is probably the most useful for you, and at least I hope so. And that I try to be pretty quick on the parts 1 and 2 so that we could get to the toolkit. Then at the end of the webinar, we'll have a few minutes on the questions and comments, and I would really like your feedback on the webinar. It would help us in the future to create more webinars that might be even more helpful for you. But let's get started. Crisis. What are crises as an overall phenomenon? Well, at some point in our lives, we're all going to be facing turning points where the security feels like our security is lost and there's no going back to the past. And that's something in common in all the crises that we might be facing, that everything changes so much that you can't go back to the way that things used to be. In psychology, we divide crises in 3 different categories. One is the development crisis. Those are like the natural transitions in your life, like when you get older, you might face puberty or retirement, or you're starting out a family or something like that. For example, middle-age crisis could be one of those things that are in that developmental crisis part there. And that's something that we're all going to face. Then, unfortunately, most of us at least, we face some kind of life crisis as well, which are categorized as like the negative changes in life, just such as divorce or getting an illness or getting unemployed or something that shakes the ground of our lives at that very moment. Usually life crises are usually the most personal ones. And then maybe the most severe category are these traumatic crises. They are the ones that are very sudden and they're highly psychologically intense events. They're overwhelming. They are really tough on us. And that's a matter of life and death right there. And why I wanted to share these different categories with you is just that this shows us that we're really dealing with something very serious and severe here when we're talking about the state of war. Traumatic crisis can also be something like natural disasters or an accident that you take a part of, or you get to witness an accident really close up. And those are something that really shakes up our security. And how does the mind react when we face something like this? Well, like in everything in psychology, everyone is affected individually, and so if you have a friend next to you who isn't feeling any anxiety or any worry about the situation, that's understandable as well, because we all act differently and react differently. But if you're in the middle of the crisis, let's say you were in that war zone right now, what's in common for all of us is that we're going to go through difficult emotions and really difficult thoughts. And right now you might be feeling that this is really unfair. The situation is really unfair. There's injustice into it. And like my colleague said this Monday, actually, she said that she feels like she has lost the belief in humanity. Like, what is this that we're actually really going through? Common reactions to different kind of crises is that we might have some rage about the unfairness of the things, or anger, and those are really strong emotions that might show up during times like these. Some of us rationalize the situation, so we push aside the feelings and we just look at the facts and we try to see what's going to lead from A to a B to a C. And some of us want to deny the whole thing. In this state of war, it could be that if you're in Finland, for example, that you're shutting out all of the news. You don't want to be talking about it. You just want to shut yourself into a warm bubble and not face the deal at all, which is understandable when you're facing something very unpleasant. Some of us rely on wishful thinking like maybe tomorrow will be better and this will all go away. But I think most of us are relying on continuous handling. So it's all the time in the back of your head. You feel like you just can't get it out, and you feel like that's the only thing that you can think about. And yes, we do need to handle the things and the crisis, and we need to talk about it. We need to acknowledge what we're feeling. But if we're doing that 24/7, it's going to turn against itself, and it's not going to be good for us, and not in the short term or in the long term. But there's something common in all of the reactions. They're normal. They're somehow automatic responses of the mind when we face a crisis. It's something that we're not even thinking about that happens. We just get angry. We just might live in that denial. We just might want to push the feelings aside. And they're not necessarily great in the long term, but that's telling you that it's important to you. It's against your values. Something's really bad and you feel awful. So the mind is trying to fix it in a quickest way possible. And I think whenever we're talking about crisis, we should also cross the line when we were talking about potentially traumatizing crisis. They're a bit different. So let's say you were in the war right now and you're experiencing or witnessing death or threat of death of another person or something like that, that you're in that war zone. Or you're getting the info that someone you love has just, for example, deceased, and the cause has been violence or an accident or something traumatizing. Or you're repeatedly exposed to the repulsive details of the war, for example, that you're seeing it very close up, even though it's not touching you physically. These are the times that it's very different to be experiencing this instead of reading the news. So if you're in a way, you're in that crisis yourself and it's touching you and your family, I think we at Auntie, we recommend that you would contact the official crisis support for this so that they can give you the right kind of support that you can deal with right now with the stuff that you're going through. But when it comes to this webinar, it's mainly, I think, for people who are feeling that anxiety when they know that something's going on. So you might have thoughts that, like, as soon as things were going back to normal and you go back to work after COVID, this came along. Like, it's too much, to handle at once, or you're very worried about what's to come, or you can't concentrate, for example, at work because the situation is so distressing and overwhelming. Or you might feel that your everyday life seems meaningless when such terrible things are happening elsewhere. And these are understandable. Something like this happens, it's obvious that we react, and these are the kind of reactions that might arise when you're hearing about the crisis. So hearing about the crisis might trigger a stress reaction, which is probably something that we're all familiar with. It's this flight or fight mode. So you get super anxious, you get super alert, and we need that stress reaction in the short term. But in the long term, that's going to cause us burnouts, and it's going to take all of the energy that our body has to offer. And it can be seen on many levels. It can be seen on your thoughts. You might have a lot of concerns. You might have memory problems. You might have the difficulty on concentrating on the things that you feel you should concentrate, or you have a lot of distressing thoughts. It can be seen in your behavior. You get irritated really easily, or you feel like you're losing your appetite, or you're eating like so much more than you have been eating. So something changes there, or you feel like you're very inefficient. And your emotions seem like you have a really hard time relaxing, or you feel nervous all the time. But there's also physical reactions to stress. So there might be headache or stomach ache or muscle tension or sweating or things like that. So if you're experiencing these all together somehow, that's probably going to tell you about that you're under a stress reaction. And it can be caused by something else in your life, but this war situation just kind of emphasizes it right now. But it can also cause anxiety. Anxiety has lots of same kind of symptoms as the stress reaction. So there's nervousness, tension, and anxiety. You have the tendency to get irritated, and you have the same kind of thing, like you have a difficulty relaxing and you're feeling restless all the time. But there's also the fact that you have constant concerns all the time, and you feel like you don't have the ability to stop the worrying. So it's in the back of your mind. So that's when we're talking about anxiety, and probably the worries are about the war at this very moment. And these are very normal reactions when you're hearing about something really awful that's going on. So what can help? What can you do? What can you, at least help your own well-being at this very moment? I have gathered up some practical tips for you here. I'm showing you the themes right here. So then we're going to go over them one by one. But right now, I recommend you take out a pen and paper and write down some of the exercises or the thoughts that arise, because we're going to go over some exercises that I would like you to participate in so that you can reflect your own life. How could you use these tools in your own life at this very moment? First tip is to limit the information overload. I think this is something we have probably already heard of, but it's important part of dealing with this situation. Second, we're going to go over your basic needs and how activities can help regulate your anxiety. And we're going to be talking about acceptance of the feelings that we're facing and why that is important. Then we're gonna be talking about some social support and how to use that in this current situation right now. And then I'm gonna show you the exercise of a worry moment and how that can help you with the constant worrying, for example. So how to limit the information overload. No matter if you're in a crisis right now, but in everyday life, if there's information overload, there's just certain capacity that our brain has to intake some information that we can understand it, and it feels like our heads is not going to explode. And that is the same thing here. If you're trying to give your head information all the time, it's probably gonna feel like your head is about to explode. And also, if you're getting that anxiety feeling after reading the news, you can't do anything about it. You can never control your emotions. Once you get the emotion, that's what you're gonna get. So the thing that you can't control actually is that whether you go into the situation that's gonna give you anxiety. People with, let's say, anxiety disorder, they usually do that. They try to avoid the situations that give them anxiety, and that's not good to a point where you can't cope with your own life anymore, or you're trying to avoid normal situations. But here, this is not a normal situation. Getting info on the war every 5 minutes, for example. So. I recommend you read the news once a day, not more. You get all the info that you need during that one moment. And that's going to give you the sense of some kind of control. And control is something we need because we can't control the war. So we might want to get that controlling feeling to our daily lives at least a little bit. You can't control, obviously, if you're talking to your friends and they want to talk about it or at work, but you can control the info that you're getting. So you might want to limit your social media use as well, because you can't control who's going to be talking about the war in social media. So it pops up in your site all the time. And that's the same thing with the pop-up notifications. You might want to remove those, because even if you're not reading the whole article, you're getting that one big headline that's going to give you some info, and then that might cause you anxiety as well. And one thing to consider as well is, when do you want to get that info? Is it right before you go to bed, or maybe earlier in the day, so that you would still have some energy to do something else, and so that when you're going to bed, it wouldn't disturb your sleep as much? So think about it. It's obviously, we're individuals in that too. Then we need to talk about basic needs. No matter if it's stress, if it's crisis, if it's a mindset of being anxious, I think we are really prone to forget the basic needs that we have. So we forget to eat regularly. We forget our daily routines. We forget to exercise, and our sleep is disturbed. But these are basically food for your mind. So if you don't sleep, you probably notice that you get into this negative spiral if you don't sleep, and your thoughts are going to be a bit more negative. Obviously, if you're not eating and getting energy, that's going to affect your mood as well. And someone told me that, yeah, but that causes anxiety to me as well. Like, I don't know if I can survive and do the regular things. They feel like they're meaningless. Well, they're not meaningless, for one thing. And the second thing is that, yes, you need to acknowledge that you're in the state of mind that you are right now. So you don't have to be able to do everything. Is there a way you could adapt your routines in relations to your current resources? So maybe instead of eating all the time, if you can't eat, maybe you just make sure that you drink enough, or if you can't sleep well, maybe you'd at least do the routines before going to bed. That might help. Or if you don't want to exercise as much, maybe you just go outside for 10 minutes. You know, it's whatever you can take in at this very moment. So I would like for you to write down, which basic need do you want to take care of now? One thing that you want to stick to, that you know is going to help you. I'm going to give you a few seconds here to think about it, and then we will continue to a second exercise right away. The second exercise is a mind map of your values at this very moment. You might want to draw this mind map on the paper that you have next to you, or you can just list a few things. But the topic is that, what are the most important things for you right now? Is it family? Is it exercise? Is it your job that you feel like you need? Your job is really important and you want to be able to do it well. Or is it your health? Is it so that you get your minds off of things? It can be whatever, and there are no right or wrong answers here, and you don't need to think about what everyone else is thinking about the answers that you're giving to these boxes. They're just for you. What's important for you right now? I'm going to give you a minute here so that you can come up with the things that are important for you right now. So if you think about your activities, actions can actually help you regulate your anxiety. So if you think about the things that you listed, what kind of an action or activity could cherish those important things that you just listed? Is there something that you could probably do today? If it's family, maybe it's like, how do you talk to your kids about war? You know, or maybe it's like, if the exercise is important to you, but you feel like you don't have the capacity right now, maybe it is that action is that you take a walk for 10 minutes, for example, today. What's one thing? So I would like you to do, or list down one thing that you could do today to cherish the most important things to you right now. And the second thing is, what could be something that would take your mind off things for a moment, for a second, for 5 minutes? Is it exercise? Is it playing a game, crafts, movies, baking? Something that you would like to normally do, something that takes your brain for a vacation. It doesn't need to be something useful. It can be something like the movie. And you might not even enjoy it as much as you would on a normal basis, but something that will make you feel even just a tiny bit of okay. Because maybe okay is the goal here instead of being super joyful and happy. And of course, when you're thinking about the activity here, you need to consider the longer term effects. So if, let's say, you go crazy shopping or you eat a bunch of candies, then afterwards you're not going to be probably feeling super great. But something that isn't necessarily bad, but it doesn't necessarily need to be good in like to help other people. So think about an activity that you could do that you enjoy somehow, and do that. And this is not avoiding the situation, avoiding the feelings. This is giving your brain a break, because it's going to need that for it to recover. Then I said that we would talk about acceptance of emotions. Negative emotions are not to be avoided. This is a rule. It's a rule if you want it to help you in a way, because negative emotions, they're something that we're all going to face, and we're not going to get rid of them. We can try to avoid them, but at the end of the day, we're still going to feel them. And if we try to push them down or suppress them, they're actually going to be even more emphasized when they peek their heads. So instead, it's time to stop. You could just sit down in all the quietness and feel that anxiety. Where do you feel it? Or is it anxiety that you feel? Do you feel it in your chest? Is it a headache? Because all the feelings can be shown in your body. It shows in your body. So even though if you can't name or recognize the feeling, you can just kind of describe it in somehow. Is there color reflecting that feeling? The reason why you should do that is that you take a few steps away from the feeling when you're able to recognize or describe it. It's going to tone down the impact that the negative emotion might have. And you need to remember, accepting the feeling doesn't mean that you like the feeling. You don't need to like the feeling. You need to accept the feeling. And there's a big difference in that. And I know it's not a simple process, but it's something that you could do by just stopping down for a moment. And maybe this thought might help you. Some emotions last longer than others. Like maybe the feeling of anxiety or worry is the feeling that you're feeling, or fear is the feeling that you're fearing. But in the long run, all emotional experience, they have a beginning, they have a peak, and they have an end. You're not going to be feeling that you're feeling right now someday. It's going to have an end. And tools that you might be using are breathing exercises or meditation or mindfulness, and they might help you stop for a moment at least, maybe to recognize the emotions a bit better. Because if you're doing something all the time, it's really hard to see the emotions behind everything. And stopping usually helps with that. Well, a few words on the social support. I think you should be really careful what kind of social support you're using. Are you using that kind of social support where you actually feel worse after having that phone call with a friend? Maybe they're dragging you down. And if you are low on your energy levels right now, maybe that's not what you need in your life at this very moment. Or maybe you have a bit more energy than your friend does, and then maybe you can support them. And that's one of the very important things that you would like to do at this very moment. But think about it. If you think about the people that you've been talking to about this war situation, think about who has helped you and who has not. Then we're going to deal with worries a bit. So usually when we're in that anxious state, thoughts easily drift into a negative spiral and we start to ruminate. We come up with even worse things that are going on. And usually the ruminating and worrying doesn't help the situation, but actually strengthens the anxious mood itself. So you're actually going to feel worse after doing that. So I have an exercise for you, which is called a worry moment that might help in this kind of situation. And I have divided that into 3 parts. These 2 first we have already gone through, and the third one is how to address the concerns by yourself. And I need you to think about it. If you're going to add the information on the war from the news in the morning, and then you're going to talk to friends about the war during the afternoon, and then you're going to deal with the worries yourself in the evening, then you're actually dealing with this whole thing 3 times a day. Is there a way that you could control that? Maybe you can add the information at the same time as you're talking to your loved ones, or maybe You're just going to do all of these in a row. And you can decide for how long you're going to actually spend on worrying about this. And that's going to give you some kind of control to your own life. It's not going to give you control over the war, but it's going to give you control in your daily life. And now we're going to look at the third part, what to do when you're on your own and you have the worries. First step, list all of the things that you worry about. It can be a long list. It's okay if there's 20 things there. What are your top concerns? What are the biggest ones that bother you the most? Are there things that actually increase the feelings of anxiety and worry? What makes the situation worse? Is it the news? Do you recognize that the news are the things that actually make it worse? Is it someone you talk to that makes it worse? Is it just being quiet all the time and it gets worse? And the next step is to think about how you could influence some of the concerns or the worries. Can you do something? If it's about the war, most likely not. If it's not, then you know what to do, probably, if you can influence it. But with the concerns that you can't influence, try to rationally assess the concerns. How realistic are your concerns? Is it really going to happen? Sometimes in a situation like this, we start to be very catastrophic, even worse than the situation really is. Your mind goes everywhere. And try to accept the movements of your mind. We know that our mind is trying to react when something really bad happens, and try to see it as a mind's intuitive way of reacting to the situation. And remember, we're getting 60,000 thoughts a day in our heads, and they're not all true. They're not facts that your mind is giving you. It's just giving you feedback. It's giving you information that isn't necessarily true. And that needs to be considered when you're worrying about things as well, especially if you have the tendency to start worrying about things. And then the third part, what are the things that ease and calm your mind? If you've had an awful day, but there was just 1 second that you felt okay, in what kind of situation was it? Why did it feel okay? Are there any things or factors that you could take from that 1 second moment to your daily life so that you could add that okay feeling into the life that you're living right now? I am going to summarize all the tools that I gave you here in this checklist now. So limit the information you read about the war to a certain moments. Remember the 3 things. Are you going to have them separate, or maybe you could put those together so you can control the time? Take care of your basic needs according to your ability to cope. Act according to what's important in the moment. Maybe now other things are more important than others, and it's okay. Bring activities into your day to give your mind a break. Try to accept the negative emotions associated with the situation. So not saying that it's going to happen, but you can try that. You're already 1 step ahead when you start to practice that. Try to take advantage of the social support that actually really helps you. And take 1 moment a day to worry. Here are some references, and now we're at the part of I'd like to get some comments, or if you have any questions, I'm happy to be here to answer them. I'm sorry we went 3 minutes over the time, but there was a lot, and I thought that maybe you might want to get the information instead of just taking something out of the webinar.
Thank you, Linna. Very, very good tips and helping us all to handle this situation, which we're now currently all in. So very good comments and questions coming in, and as we are a little short in time, I will pick a few that we could go over. So this is probably something that quite a few are wondering at the moment, that has also been discussed quite a lot, but maybe this question about how can we talk to our kids about this, as this is something that I'm sure many are wondering at the moment.
Yeah, we all have our individual ways of reacting to our kids, and some of us, if the kids are not asking about it, they might not want to add information into their lives if it's not necessary. I think even though most likely they're going to hear it somewhere. So you just need to consider how old your kid is or child is, and then try to explain the war in their way of understanding the world. Sometimes kids only need the simplest answers, and they might not even ask more. So if you can just form and think about just a few sentences that you can tell them in their language, which is the level that they can understand the things. So you might want to consider that as well. So you don't need to explain the whole situation. You can just try to simplify it in a way. But it's really important to be talking to your kids if the situation is like that, for sure.
Great, thank you. Then one question about, is this such a topic that should be discussed in the workplace? So, or is it okay to actually ignore it in the workplace? What do you say about that?
Well, all workplaces are obviously different, and they
Yeah.
have different policies, but I think when something big like this happens, usually talking is better than not talking. And I was doing this webinar in Finnish, and we were talking about if you're a boss, how to, or leader, how to address this thing. And my tip is that talk to your workers, ask how they're doing and how the situation is actually affecting them, and give them a break. Right now, all of us can't concentrate 100%, and the efficiency isn't there at 100%. But maybe later on, there will be time again when we can concentrate better, and maybe this is a time to give ourselves a small break and be understandable.
For sure, thank you. We do have other questions as well, but unfortunately we are running out of time, so I wish we could answer them all at this time, but I think now we will just need to say thank you to all. Thanks for joining us today. It was really great to see so many of you here, and thanks for all the great comments and questions, and we really hope that you were able to also get some concrete tips here today.
Thank you. I hope you got some tools out of this, at least.
Yeah, so thanks everyone, take care, and we will talk to you and see you later.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.